Sam Darnold finally became the quarterback he was always destined to be. With 4,319 passing yards and 35 touchdowns in 2025, guiding Seattle to a 14-3 record and a trip to the Super Bowl in his debut season as a Seahawk. And yet, for years, the NFL insisted that Sam Darnold was a failure. You talk about who's going to play quarterback, who's going to do that for the Carolina Panthers? He's not the answer. I will never be sold on him as a franchise quarterback. So, how did the league's most infamous bust become the man standing on football's greatest stage? Was he ever really broken, or was he just a talent trapped in the wrong environment? To understand that, we have to go back to when Sam was just a young man in Southern California. Sam Darnold was born on June 5th, 1997, in Dana Point, and he was raised in the nearby city of San Clemente, the type of Southern California community where sports are less an activity and more of a family creed. His mom taught physical education. His sister was a star athlete, and that is when USC took notice. USC coaches Clay Helton and Steve Sarkisian saw him at a camp, and he offered me there on the spot. And his grandfather, Dick Hammer, was a USC athlete who would later become the iconic Marlboro Man. You know, athletically. You know, basketball player, volleyball player, went to the Olympics, like you said, Marlboro Man, he was just an incredible person. That's not just football pedigree. That's competitive instinct in his DNA. But here is where the story takes a turn. Darnold didn't begin his high school career as the quarterback. And as a young kid, Sam was the phenom in 6th, 7th grade and just a guy that could excel at basketball, baseball, football, you name it. He was a two-sport problem. He was a 2-time league MVP in basketball. And his coach swore Sam could pull down a rebound and throw a 70-foot outlet pass, almost like a modern-day Wes, unselled with arm strength, vision, and composure amid the chaos of the court. In football, he began as a wide receiver and linebacker. I played receiver and I played linebacker my sophomore year of high school because there was a quarterback waiting in the wings. Then the starting QB got hurt, and Darnold filled in as a sophomore, immediately engineering a comeback with a touchdown pass and a game-clinching 2-point conversion. The following week, he returned to receiver without a second thought. He was a team-first player with no ego. The moment he became the full-time QB, his performance became otherworldly. He threw for 5 touchdowns in a single game on 2 separate occasions, a school record. And even following a foot injury in his junior year, he returned as a senior to amass 3,000 passing yards, 39 passing touchdowns, 800 rushing yards, and 13 scores on the ground. He powered San Clemente to a CIF championship game. And then a concussion took him out of the game as the title slipped through their fingers in a high-scoring affair. It was a harsh lesson at a young age. He still wasn't a guaranteed 5-star, high-profile recruit, so his coach got inventive, sending Sam's basketball highlights to football recruiters, as if to say, just look at the athlete. And that strategy is what caught USC's eye. USC coaches Clay Helton and Steve Sarkisian saw him at a camp and made him an offer right then and there. Yeah. Just threw for about, 30, 40 minutes and went up to Sark's office and he offered me there on the spot. And suddenly, the young man who didn't even start as a quarterback was stepping into the most high-stakes quarterback situation in the entire country. Because at USC, the next man up is never just another player. He's the next big story. Darnold showed up in 2015 and did something that fans can't stand but that quarterbacks quietly need. He sat for a complete redshirt year, watching Cody Kessler lead the team. Then he learned from behind Max Brown as the depth chart was rearranged. It was so fun to be able to have an older player on the team really accept me. The 2016 season opened with Darnold as the backup, and USC got off to a 1-2 start, the kind of record that turns the Coliseum into an echo chamber of criticism. That's when the coaching staff made a courageous choice. They went with the redshirt freshman. His first start was on the road against Utah. It was a close defeat, and it's meaningful that it was painful, because it was the last time anything in his story would be ordinary for quite a while. From that Utah loss forward, USC didn't just get better. They ignited, tearing off 8 wins in a row as Darnold became a weekly marvel. Who is this kid? A nightmare for defenses. Is on the money, fires caught by Burnett. The offense became unstoppable, putting up 37 points and 518 yards per game during that streak. And Darnold wasn't just a placeholder, he was proving his worth. Consistently throughout his career, whenever the play disintegrates, he possesses a unique talent for extending it, keeping his gaze downfield, and delivering pinpoint throws. He established a new USC freshman record with 26 touchdown passes, shattering a mark that had been in place since Todd Marinovich's time, and then he achieved something no USC quarterback had ever done: 5 touchdown passes in consecutive games against Arizona and Cal. He had mobility as well, with 230 rushing yards, the most for a USC quarterback since 1991. That skill was vital, because it was the reason his greatest plays felt like spontaneous backyard football, but executed with the calm of a seasoned pro. Then came the performance that put the entire country on notice. January 2nd, 2017, the Rose Bowl, facing Penn State. USC was trailing by 14 points when Darnold single-handedly turned the game into a highlight reel that seemed to have a heartbeat. There goes Adoree Jackson in the game. The corner's already got a pick. He wasn't just managing the offense, he was putting on a show. A deep ball splits the defense for a touchdown. The final stat line was legendary: 453 yards and 5 touchdowns in the Rose Bowl. He shattered the record for touchdown passes, engineered a stunning 52-49 comeback, and held the MVP trophy at just 19 years old. This was more than a great game. This was a first-round draft profile being written in real time. And when you do that on college football's most celebrated stage, the buzz stops being about potential and becomes a countdown to the 2018 NFL Draft. And by the time that night arrived, Sam Darnold was no longer being sized up like a regular prospect. He was being pitched as the definitive answer. With the 3rd pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Sam Darnold. The Jets draft him 3rd overall, and a label is immediately seared onto his name: franchise savior. From day one, he was expected to fix it all. The pressure immediately ramped up because New York opted against easing him in. The logic wasn't about him being an unready rookie. The decision was, we're starting him because he gives us a chance to win the game. With that, Darnold became the youngest Week 1 starting quarterback since the merger. The entire league scrutinized his first snap as if it were a final exam. And the cruelest part was this: his very first pass in the NFL didn't just go badly. It became the kind of nightmare play that can follow a quarterback for their entire career. It happened on Monday Night Football. Darnold tried to force the ball into a tight spot, and a defender jumped the route for a pick 6. On his very first play, they let him roll out to survey the field. He throws back against his body, and it's intercepted and returned for a touchdown. It was an instant public humiliation on national television. Welcome to the league. But this is where you learn about his true character. He refused to crumble. He responded by throwing 2 touchdowns. He played mistake-free for the rest of the game, and the Jets won 48-17, making that interception a distant memory. Sam Darnold, with time in the pocket, looks deep down the field and into the end zone. A touchdown for the Jets to Robbie Anderson. It's the kind of resilience that makes you think, okay, this kid is built differently. But even during that year of promise, his story was constantly interrupted. You'd see glimpses of magic, him scrambling, creating something from nothing. Then his season was cut short by a foot injury that cost him valuable time and stalled his momentum. The official word was a strained foot. After tests on Monday, it was confirmed as a foot strain, and he was listed as day-to-day. But the offensive line was porous, the offense lacked consistency, and his final stats looked like those of a rookie forced to develop in chaos. Still, the league wasn't calling him a failure yet, not even remotely. Because the real setback wasn't one bad throw or a single loss, it came the next season, when Darnold lost time to an illness that didn't care one bit about his arm talent. And then the report came, number 14 has mono and he will be out for this game. In 2019, Darnold was hit with mononucleosis. It's the kind of diagnosis that doesn't just put you on the sideline, it completely saps your strength. He missed games, lost his timing, and as the season moved on without him, he was left to watch a critical year of his development simply evaporate. When he was finally able to return, the flashes were there again, enough to remind everyone why he was drafted so high. But the NFL doesn't reward flashes, it judges you on defining moments. On a Monday night against the Patriots, with the sound on, the game became a nightmare. The pressure was relentless, and Darnold said the 2 words that became an inescapable online verdict: seeing ghosts. With that one quote, he was no longer a young QB in a tough spot. He was a punchline, a meme. The narrative became that maybe he couldn't handle the big stage. He was now a cautionary tale. After that, his third season stopped being about growth. It became a fight for survival in a franchise that was asking for a miracle every Sunday. And in 2020, the Jets didn't just have a bad year, they completely imploded. The situation was so bad they were called losers at losing. The arrival of new coach Adam Gase, instead of being a fresh start, caused Darnold's development to come to a complete standstill. Within a system that felt overly complex, mismanaged, and devoid of any rhythm. Then, his body betrayed him again. He tries to spin away, but can't. Alexander Johnson gets the sack. A shoulder injury threw him off schedule, and the season became a weekly struggle of bad field position, forced passes, and no opportunity to get going. The final numbers were exactly what his critics were hoping for: 9 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and a final record for the Jets of 2-14. That's when the narrative officially shifted from a young quarterback in a bad situation to that one damning word: bust. He looks nothing like the phenom from USC. He doesn't resemble a top 5 draft pick. The post-mortem analysis was just as harsh. One breakdown simply asked, "What happened?" One of the most pointed answers was Adam Gase. By early 2021, the Jets decided to start over. They had the number 2 pick, made the call to draft a new quarterback, and traded Darnold away. 3 chaotic seasons ended with a record of 13-25, with 45 touchdown passes against 39 interceptions. Sam Darnold, the Jets' starting quarterback for the last few years, was now headed to the Carolina Panthers. And the amazing thing was, Carolina didn't see him as damaged goods. In April of 2021, the Panthers traded a haul of picks to bring him aboard and even exercised his 5th-year option, as if they were investing in the USC version of Sam Darnold. That was the sales pitch. New team, new coaching staff, a whole new start. It was the same mandate to save a franchise, just wearing different uniforms. And for a fleeting 3 weeks, it actually seemed to be working. You know what? I'm hitting the reset button on all of it. I'm tearing up the old timeline for when I believe this team is going to contend. Carolina burst out of the gate with a 3-0 record. Darnold's play was steady, just solid enough to keep things moving in the right direction. Then, he accomplished something that felt strangely significant. He became the first quarterback since 1970 to run for a touchdown in 3 consecutive games to open a season. The narrative shifted, nobody was calling him a bust. Instead, the word was redeemed. But the NFL has a way of ruining a perfect story. The winning streak evaporated. The offense grew cautious and constricted. The costly mistakes began to pile up once more. And then, his own body failed him. Again. An injury will sideline quarterback Sam Darnold after he went down during the game against the Patriots. His season was cut short by a fractured scapula, coming after a chaotic stretch where he was pulled from the lineup, put back in, and then pulled out all over again. At one stage, the Panthers went so far as to bring back Cam Newton, a move that suggested the organization had no clear vision for its own future. When all was said and done, Darnold hadn't been redeemed. He was simply worn out. And for a quarterback who possesses immense talent but carries a damaged reputation, there is really only one option to salvage a career: vanish inside the planet's premier quarterback incubator and absorb the habits of genuine champions. So, in March of 2023, Darnold agreed to a 1-year contract with the San Francisco 49ers to become a student under the tutelage of Kyle Shanahan. Sam Darnold is on his way to the San Francisco 49ers. And he did more than just fill a roster spot. He earned the number 2 quarterback position during camp, outperforming Trey Lance, the other 3rd overall, selection, the very player who was meant to be the face of the franchise. Instead, Darnold's impressive play rendered Lance disposable, and Trey was promptly traded. The league seems to savor cruel twists of fate. For the majority of the season, he remained on the sideline. Brock Purdy was on a hot streak, the roster was stacked with talent, and Darnold's assignment was a quiet one. Think quicker, read defenses better, make shrewder choices. Then week 18 arrived. With the number 1 seed already secured, the 49ers at last gave him the starting nod. It was his first in over a year. It felt good to be on the field, getting some meaningful snaps. He passed for 189 yards and a touchdown, ran for another score, and came close to leading a comeback. More significantly, he demonstrated his ability to command Shanahan's offense during an actual NFL contest. And though he returned to the bench for the postseason, he was still an integral part of the mechanism as San Francisco advanced to Super Bowl 58, a heartbreaking overtime defeat, 25-22. It was the type of high-pressure atmosphere Darnold had never been exposed to as the leader. He would later refer to it as an invaluable lesson, explaining that it fundamentally altered his perspective on the sport, as if he'd finally been handed the playbook that everyone else already possessed. So, when free agency arrived in 2024, Darnold was no longer regarded as a joke. His perception had shifted to that of a post-hype breakout candidate. And that's when Minnesota came, calling, in need of a transitional quarterback, just before destiny intervened and tore that blueprint to shreds. You know, I'm thrilled about this opportunity, just for the chance to be with this franchise, to work with these coaches, and to team up with these players. They have an incredibly skilled roster, and I can't wait to get started. Darnold did more than just take the starting job. He seized control. His teammates voted him a team captain, which in the NFL is the ultimate statement of, we have your back, even if the outside world doesn't yet. And just like that, the entire narrative around his career inverted. A blistering start to the season, a campaign where his final stats seemed to belong to another player entirely. 4,319 passing yards, 35 touchdowns, and only 12 interceptions, all while piling up so many victories that Minnesota concluded the season at 14-3, locking down the number 1 seed. For the very first time in his professional career, he wasn't just trying to stay afloat. He was controlling the tempo of the game. Darnold with the pump fake. He throws! Touchdown in the end zone. Then came the next chapter in the saga. Seattle presented him with a serious long-term commitment, a 3-year deal worth $110.5 million. And just like an old addiction, the bus narrative attempted a comeback. It's official. Sam Darnold is indeed heading to the Seattle Seahawks on a 3-year, $110 million contract. Another new team, another new system, another new set of pressures. The world was waiting for him to falter. Instead, he just kept building successes, one after the other. It was like that one evening when he began. A game with a first-half performance so flawless it seemed unbelievable. 18 for 18 for 227 yards and 4 touchdowns, without a single incomplete pass until after halftime. This wasn't a few lucky passes, it was a masterclass in quarterbacking. Seattle capitalized on that momentum, finishing 13-4 and capturing the number 1 seed. And then Darnold accomplished the one thing his narrative had always denied him. He started winning the high-stakes games that forge a player's legacy. A victory in the playoffs, followed by another, and then a triumphant NFC Championship performance that sent him directly past all the ghosts of his past and onto the Super Bowl stage. Let's get your quarterback in here, Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, get over here, buddy. That's it. Take it. It's yours. You deserve it. And the league, in its love for poetic justice, arranged the ultimate redemption arc, a Super Bowl 60 showdown against the New England Patriots. So the real question isn't about how a supposed failure reached the Super Bowl. It's this. What if he was never the problem, but was simply forged in chaos and only found his footing once he landed in an environment that didn't require flawlessness just to stay afloat? That is the true story of Sam Darnold. This wasn't some overnight success story, nor was it a meme that accidentally blossomed into a fairy tale. This is about a quarterback who was defined by his most public failures, who then stepped out of the spotlight to painstakingly rebuild his craft until the game finally rose to the level of his talent. Sam Darnold did more than just hold his own against Matthew Stafford. For the time being, he has quieted the entire legion of critics who swore he couldn't deliver on the biggest stage. Every single narrative about Sam Darnold got demolished on Sunday night. That was a phenomenal thing to see. New York was a whirlwind of disorder. Carolina was a detour built on false promises. San Francisco became his laboratory. In Minnesota, he showed his work. In Seattle, he cashed the check. It's a long journey from being written off to proving you belong. So if you're still using the word bust, you're no longer evaluating the player, you're just hung up on his schedule. And if you enjoy stories about the NFL's initial miscalculations, make sure you subscribe to Strip Sack because another player is already being mislabeled, and you will want the complete picture before the internet decides the ending.